Now, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has signed deals with 3 European football teams said to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, the government says it wants to attract investment and tourists to the country despite the ongoing conflict in the east of the country. So, is the DRC sports washing? Now, sports washing is the use of popular sports to promote a positive image and distract from a country's human rights issues. The Democratic Republic of the Congo has made deals with European football clubs at a time when the government is negotiating another deal with M23 rebels to end fighting in eastern DRC. Now, that's a region the World Food Programme says over 7,000 people have been killed and more than 7 million uprooted from their homes this year alone. In January, a Human Rights Watch report described a deteriorating human rights and humanitarian situation in the DRC, accusing President Felix Tshisekedi of cracking down on opposition members, civil society activists, critics, and journalists. Here's what we know about the deal so far. In October last year, the DRC signed a landmark 3-year deal with Italian football club AC Milan to become a premium and official tourism destination partner. The club did not disclose the value of the deal, but it includes plans to set up a football academy in the DRC. The government also inked another 3-year football agreement in June, this time with the French club AS Monaco, starting this month. DRC Heart of Africa will be printed on the sleeve of Monaco's jerseys. It will also appear on replica shirts sold to the public and on the front of the academy team shirts. The DRC has also signed a 4-year deal in July, reportedly worth $50 million, with the Spanish football club FC Barcelona. Club players will wear training jerseys with the Congolese brand. The Democratic Republic of the Congo currently ranks 61st in the latest FIFA World Rankings, but its football clubs don't have adequate infrastructure, funding, or sponsorship. The Heart of Africa deals have had a mixed reaction.
Is this the priority in a country where insecurity is rampant and the government does not control part of the national territory? We don't think this is the priority for the Congo. Before signing such contracts, we should have modernized our stadiums, reassured tourists for their safety, and built roads. Without that, I don't know the relevance of such a contract.
I think they've done the right thing by pouring this money in, because first of all, everyone will take an interest in the DRC. Maybe tomorrow we'll have visitors who will come here and be able to understand and get to know the Congolese environment. And the Congolese environment is full of stories. The parks, the volcanoes, the river, and so on. That's millions of dollars we could collect.
Now, neighboring Rwanda has had football sponsorship deals for 7 years. In 2018, Rwanda inked a $12.8 million per year partnership with the London football club Arsenal. The following year, they entered a similar sponsorship agreement with France's PSG, and in 2023, they signed a 5-year sponsorship deal with German club Bayern Munich to develop football and promote tourism.
When you look at the number of tourists from the UK, has grown to over 1 million tourists since Rwanda signed that deal with Visit Rwanda with Arsenal Football Club that's in London. So the economic potential of that, you've seen an increment of jobs moving from about 388,000 jobs last year that were being supported by the tourism sector to now being over 400,000 jobs. And that is expected to even rise further because of that deal. The Visit Rwanda deal with the major footballing cities.
Before, people knew Rwanda because of genocide, but now they know it through that partnership of between these big clubs, PSG, Arsenal, Bayern Munich, recently Atletico Madrid in Spain. So that's one. And through that, it has also attracted many people to they can even invest in Rwanda.
Let's hear more from Stephanie Ndeye. She's a researcher, African sport governance and political analyst. She joins me from Edinburgh, Scotland. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Matters. Now, first off, do you think that football shirts sponsorships actually work? And have Arsenal fans been flocking to Rwanda?
Good question, because I was thinking one of the metrics that people have about the sponsorship deals is they do ask, how is Rwanda going to benefit from this? And when you look at Rwanda, they do publish statistics, which is like talk about we have increase of the tourism numbers, but I don't think that's actually the metrics that Kagame is looking for. He is looking for soft power, which we can now call them attention capital. So I think when you look at from Rwanda's perspective, is it working for Kagame? We would say it's working for him, not necessarily in the number of the tourists coming in, because it's also bringing not only just what he thinks is good attention, but we've been having a lot of backlash coming in from the West, particularly claiming that there's a lot of human rights abuses in Rwanda, asking about the legitimacy of whatever elections that's going on in Rwanda as well. So it's a matter of asking who really you're going to talk to. Is it really the Rwandese who are benefiting? But from a point of Arsenal, I think they're getting in some capital, which is financial capital, which from the club's perspective, that is substantial. But from the Rwandese perspective, I don't think that's very substantial.
All right. Still staying with Rwanda, before we go to the DRC, which is our major focus here on Africa Matters, you know, critics say that foreign aid finances, the foreign aid actually finances the basic needs that Rwanda itself should finance as a matter of top priority.
Indeed, you've talked about Rwanda, but in the context of the DRC, you're having questions from the Swedish government, who are giving aid to DRC, and so people are wondering how can a country which is asking for aid, how is it taking money to Barcelona? And asking is the Swedish government actually sponsoring Barcelona? And so these are upside down national priorities where we also have to ask, where is this money coming from both of the governments? Is it coming from the taxpayers' money? And if this is sports washing, can we also talk about money laundering and what proceeds are we? Where is it coming from? Is it from corruption? Is it from the minerals in these countries? Yeah.
All right. And you know, the DRC deal with this, football clubs, is it estimated to be worth about $100 million, even though they have not, disclosed the figures. So is this an attempt at sports washing, as the critics have suggested? And that is something that you've touched on earlier on.
Indeed. First of all, when you talk about sports washing, I think we also have to talk about it from who has defined sports washing. What is the definition of sports washing? Is it using sports, investment in sports, to shield from corruption, from human rights abuses? And then why are we talking about it from a perspective of only investment in, for example, in Barcelona, and for example, in Bayern Munich, which it comes to Rwanda, comes to Arsenal, but not when it comes to local football clubs, where critics are saying, for example, the DRC should be focusing on sports in their country. But that does not still negate whatever is happening in DRC, which is the humanitarian crisis. Mm-hmm. So they could be using money to sponsor football clubs within DRC, but still to shield away from whatever is happening, corruption, again, humanitarian crisis.
All right. And you bring up a very important point, the DRC sponsoring these international football clubs. Now, there is an irony right here. So DRC is spending a lot of money, millions of dollars, to sponsor these football clubs. Yet at the same time, we are seeing travel restrictions that was issued earlier on, like this year. The US issued a travel advisory to its citizens not to travel to the DRC because of the conflict that was there. So how will this play out? Because you are telling people come to DRC, then the government is telling them, no, you know what, don't even go to DRC.
Indeed, I did listen to the Minister of Sport in DRC trying to justify this investment to Barcelona, and he had 3 pointers. One of them was, we're going to get Barcelona coaches, training our coaches and also our players. And they also talked about the culture and the tourism. We're going to advertise whatever the culture is in DRC. And then that's going to also bring tourism, which to me is, the third point that he also brought out was, we are also a country at war. And I was thinking, these are very contradictory points, because how can you be asking people to come to your country when there is war? So I think for me, we can also take the main point of the investment from DRC. The actual main point for them is they're trying to play the game that Rwanda is playing, because DRC are the same people who, via the foreign minister, who wrote to Bayern Munich, wrote to Arsenal and said, please stop having sponsorship with Rwanda, because this money or whatever proceeds is enabling the M23, who are allegedly or even confirmed that they are being backed by Rwanda.
And
but I think, I think, let me just finish this. I think Congo just realized that let us play the games on its own terms, and let's go find another club which is sort of cash strapped and try to see if we're going to play the games. But I also don't think it's a good strategy from the Rwandese perspective. Not Rwanda, I mean, from the Congolese perspective.
And I was about to ask you that question about DRC criticizing Rwanda for what it called the blood-stained sponsorship. And right now it's doing this, it's having a similar deal. So the question would be then, Nde, is this part of a growing reverse trend of African governments sponsoring wealthy European clubs to promote tourism and investment?
So that's also a very good question, because you can put this into context here, because when you look at, we can have the African context, but also we can look at it from the global perspective, where when you look at the Gulf states, we had Qatar versus Saudi Arabia, and it started with Qatar bidding for the World Cup. Qatar, if we're going to do any kind of matchup here, not necessarily by GDP or anything, but the size of the country, Qatar here is Rwanda. And so Qatar did this, had this World Cup, and then Saudi Arabia, because they do want to be the country that dictates how the Gulf, the Arab world is going philosophically, diplomatically, politically, then they did also start playing by the game or the rules that the Qatari did. This is the same that DRC has done here, where they have tried to fight Rwanda or Kagame on his own terms. And I think still, if we're going to gauge this, they're reacting to Kagame. And I also think it's also not, as I said, it's not a good strategy, because when you look at all these countries that I've mentioned, which is Qatar, which is Saudi Arabia, which is Congo and Rwanda, I think Congo is a very different country, because it's standing, its own ground it's not very solid as compared to these other countries. These two countries in the Gulf Arab states, they're monarchs. When you look at Rwanda, Kagame just won his election in 2024, 99%. Yes. When you look at Congo, they have lost footing in Goma. It has been seized. They do have insurgency, which is the M23, who also had made some advancements towards Kinshasa at some point.
All right.
And also, yes. So I think, and it did have an attempted coup. So I'm thinking from a point of DRC, this could backfire completely. We also had people protesting in the streets against this kind of deals to Barcelona. They're asking, why are we getting this?
All right.
Yes.
Sunday, as we wind up this conversation, all said and done, so where does this leave the football teams in DRC? Do they feel like the government has forgotten them? Do they feel like, this is the end, or how are they going to benefit? So
let's talk about the idealistic way and what usually happens in Africa. Football in Africa is very much, I would say, it's a very much state affair or political affair, where you find people who have political ambitions. They sponsor football clubs. They are also part of the football federations. And ideally speaking, this is not supposed to be how it happens. And so, if you ask me, I also don't think the comparison in saying that, we have the Congolese government sponsoring Barcelona, but the football league in Congo is not being sponsored. That is not the work of the government in Congo. Not just even when everything is okay, when, say, there was no conflict or anything, because there is a federation. The football federation in Congo, we have to start asking, Why is this partnership not between the Football Federation of Congo and Barcelona or even La Liga? Why is it a state to a football club? And so the questions here are not just on the government of Congo, but also the Football Federation of Congo. What is it doing, and why is the Football League still not working?
All right.
Why is it not able to produce very good footballers for the national team, for example?
All right. Stephanie Day, thank you for your time. She's a researcher, African sports governance and political analyst. She was talking to us from Edinburgh, Scotland. To Ghana now, where thousands of children living in coastal communities are kept out of school and forced into work. Despite laws against the practice, the country's Fisheries Commission says child labor and trafficking is widespread in the fishing industry, robbing many children of education and better prospects. Rights advocates are now calling for better support so parents aren't forced to send their children to work. Nabil Ahmed Rufai brings us this report from Accra.
Joseph Kote lives in Jamestown, a fishing community in Ghana's capital, Accra. He is getting ready to go to sea. The 13-year-old should be at school with his friends, but he says he has to work to feed himself.
It is not easy. I started joining the fishermen to go fishing on the sea when I was 9 years old. When we go fishing, we stay on the sea for about a week before we return to the shore.
In Ghana, official statistics show that more than 1 million children between the ages of 5 and 17 are forced into work, often in hazardous conditions, and 50,000 children work in the fishing industry. That's despite Ghana's laws prohibiting children up to 18 years old from any form of work. But try telling that to old fishermen who only know this way of life.
We allow the children to go fishing because we want them to learn the ropes of the trade at an early age. There are no jobs even when they go to school and graduate. So we train them in fishing so they can get a sustainable job.
That said, not everyone in the fishing industry agrees. Fishmongers here say they are worried that children are being used as cheap labor. They are paid less than $1 a day, 9 cents, which is below Ghana's minimum wage of nearly $2, while older fishermen get about $10 every day.
Fishermen are losing their livelihoods, and the more they lose their livelihoods, the more they find ways of cutting down on costs, and the more they find ways of cutting down the cost, then the more they find ways of using children, so that the children help that they don't have to pay them wages or salaries or whatever it is.
We have some questions.
Basic education is free and compulsory in Ghana. The law was introduced by the government specifically to keep children out of work, but enforcement has been lax. Most of the children working here are likely to face limited future career opportunities. They are also at risk of poorer health conditions and chronic poverty, according to child rights advocates. As Joseph Kote's shoulders carry the burden of child labor, he and many others like him hope one day to trade canoes for the classroom. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, Africa Matters, Accra.
Well, children in the Somali coastal town of Hobyo are also missing out on school. Blistering winds and choking dust storms driven by a changing climate are forcing families indoors, shutting businesses and leaving children sick and malnourished. Najib Ahmed reports from Hobyo, which was once thriving on fishing and trade.
In Hobyo, the wind never seems to stop. It carries dust that makes it hard to breathe and even harder to raise a healthy family. That 5-year-old Kahali knows the struggle all too well. This is her second visit to the hospital this month.
My children keep coughing. I'm forced to keep them in the house because it's dusty and windy outside, and that causes viral infections, and I don't have the money for treatment.
Residents say children here miss at least 30 school days every year because of windstorms. Doctors are also recording more cases of bronchitis and viral infections than ever before. saying they are treating 30 to 50 children per day.
We normally treat recurring cases like coughing, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, chest congestion, which are caused by climate-related viral infections. The children can't stay outdoors for long as the windstorms cause a drop in weight and malnutrition.
That's because they not only destroy crops but also disrupt livelihoods, leaving many families unable to afford nutritious food. Experts say the climate crisis has made Somalia more vulnerable to recurrent drought and strong winds, leading to desertification that has turned daily life upside down. Businesses are suffering too, as high wind speeds disrupt fishing, coastal marine transport, and the residents' way of life. Najib Ahmed, Africa Matters, Hobyo, Somalia.
In contrast, a group of young people in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo have set up a local nail production plant in Goma. Their invention, financed by loans paid in small amounts over time, is raising hopes among a population battered by decades of armed conflict. Prosper Heri Ngorora brings us the details.
Since 2022, these young applied technology graduates have been taking on a sector that others avoid due to security and political uncertainties.
A lot of nails are imported from neighboring countries. We thought if they can do it, why can't we? Nails are a pressing need here in Goma, because people are building houses out of planks, and we got motivated to satisfy that need. If the war ends here, I see Goma as a technological center in the DRC and even in all of Central Africa.
The startup imports the raw materials from Uganda and produces 4 tons of nails a day. It's already supplying many hardware stores in the capital of North Kivu and competing with imported nail suppliers.
Many nails come from Dubai, Uganda and Rwanda. Since they're imported nails, their price is high. If the nails are produced here, it will reduce the cost, and it's an advantage for us because they don't come from far away. Transport costs are reduced and there are no customs duties.
The founders of Empire Technology claim they are the first to produce nails in Eastern DRC. They aim to increase their daily output from 4 to 10 tons of nails and put an end to the import of these parts into the DRC in coming months. Economic analysts say such initiatives can offer employment and discourage young people from joining armed groups, as well as revitalize the local economy, which has been weakened by decades of war.
The state should support such initiatives with tax exemptions. The more we have initiatives like these, the more we'll be able to reduce the crime rate because young people will have work.
The DRC is mineral rich, but it is one of the world's least industrialized countries. Congolese authorities say they need $58 billion to achieve the country's industrialization master plan and reduce the cost of import by 60%. But it may take a while before they nail it. Prosper Heri Ngorora, Africa Matters, Goma, DRC.
To Nigeria now, where a church is uniting deaf and hearing impaired worshippers by offering church services in sign language. The Christian Mission for the Deaf delivers sermons, teaches sign language, and organizes social activities for a community often neglected or stigmatized in Nigeria's society. Grace Kuriakanja reports.
The rhythm of drums guide a unique form of worship in a church located in Lagos. People here worship in silence, expressing their faith with their hands. The church also has a sign language teaching unit, helping deaf people connect with and better understand the world.
Before, I was going to church with my family when I was a child. I didn't understand what they were saying, so I would just sit down there. I didn't understand anything they were saying because I'm deaf.
Up to 60 people gather to worship in this church every Sunday.
The deaf church has great importance for us, the deaf, because with it we come to know Christ, and it also provides us with a community for people like ourselves. Whereas before we were living in isolation with our families, they don't know there are other deaf people we can relate to. That is the importance of sign language and also the importance of the church.
The Nigerian National Association of the Deaf estimates that over 9 million out of the country's 232 million strong population are deaf or living with hearing impairment. Traditional beliefs still shape perceptions of disability in some African communities.
African society believed that deafness or blindness or any disability was a curse. So they took people to churches or fetish priests looking for a miracle. But it doesn't work like that. The fact we can communicate with our hands, sign language, is the miracle itself.
Although Nigeria passed a law that prohibits discriminating against people with a disability in 2019, analysts argue that the country remains a non-inclusive society because it lacks infrastructure for people living with disabilities. The weekly worship offers more than just spiritual nourishment in a language they can understand. It also provides a sense of community for people who usually feel alienated in their daily lives. Grace Kuriakanja, Africa Matters.
That's our show this week. Share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode and leave your comments on our Africa Matters YouTube page or on X. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Brenda Radido.